Good morning, everyone. We are reaching you from the storehouse. And as usual, the storehouse represents a hub of information, but not the information that we have become accustomed to. This is information that is reaching you from a spiritual source, and we are going to be, continuing from our last discussion, or rather, I'll be continuing from where we stopped from our last discussion. In our previous forum, we were talking about what a human is and who a human is. And we tried to describe that the human is the submissive state of the man. So, but it became clear at the end of that forum, based on the feedback we got, that there were some of you who needed clarity on that definition. Will I say definition, or needed more clarity on that idea or concept? So before we get into what we have for you today, we would like to clear it up. Yesterday we said that you can't get to know what the woman is without getting to know what the man is. And we described the man to be male and female. That's what we described the man to be, the male and female. Meaning that the man was the state in which the Spirit, who brought each and every one of us into the world, brought us in. And in that state of man, we are male and female. But the state in which the male and female were brought in, which is that of man, represents independence. That's what that state represents. And unfortunately, our independence in that state is an independence in our nature, is our independence in the nature of sin and death. So what brings about woman is a change of state. That's what brings about woman. What brings about woman is a change of state. A change of state from a man to a woman. And what the state of a woman represents is a state of submission, a state of dependence. But as man, being independent, we are independent in that nature of sin. But as woman, we are meant to be dependent and submissive to the person of God. See, but you can't have the state of woman, or we can't attain the state of a woman without the person who has the capacity to effect that change in us. And that change can only be effected by the person of God. And the person of God can effect that change in us, being in the sky or operating in a vacuum. That person of God has to be in the midst of the people to effect that change. So in simple terms, the woman represents the state of submission, and the only person the woman is supposed to be submitted to is the person of God, because it's the person of God that effects the change or the transformation from the state of man to a woman. And that transformation can be achieved by what we do in our world today, which was the basics of our discussion yesterday, or rather in our previous forum, that changing the sex or the biological state of a male to a female doesn't signify that change from the state of man to the state of woman. That it can't work that way, which is why we have the chaos or the controversies we have in our world today. So that being said, today we'll be looking at the need for that change of state. Because we have described man to be the state of independence, and we have described woman to be the state of dependence. And currently in our world today, there is no woman. See, and we are saying that now from the perspective or with the concept of what we have described a woman to be. We are not talking about there are no females. We are saying that there are no women in our world today. that the state of a human hasn't been attained by anyone in the world today. You see, so now we have described a transformation. But what is the need for that transformation? Which is what we are going to be emphasizing on today. The need for that change of state. You know, as man, when we read from the scriptures, or even as we see our activities, even without referring to the Bible, because there are most people, let me not say most people, a lot of people don't believe in the Bible because they have tagged the Bible to be a Christian book or a religious book for Christians. But that's not what the Bible represents. It is Christianity that has laid hold on the Bible. So even if you read the Bible or you believe in the Bible or not, man has been structured to live in a certain way. Those who believe the Bible and those who don't believe the Bible still have the same consciousness that man is the male and female is the woman. Whether you believe the Bible or not, that is common and standard knowledge. See, but now we are talking about the need for that change of state based on what we have discussed. And as man, we have described the nature of man to be independence and the nature of sin, which brings about death. Because as we read from the scriptures, the wages of sin is death, which is why at the end of man's exhibition is what we now see to be the death of the man, the sleeping off of the man, that we have to now bury him underneath the ground. That is the end of all of man's activity. You see, but the drive of man is how he can do things to live. I don't know if you get me. Yes. All a man does is, to seek for a way he can stay alive. We go into researches. We go into, looking for, every day we are looking for means of improving human life. That's because subconsciously it has been imputed in us that man needs to stay alive. Man needs to stay alive. You see, but we can't stay alive because of the activities we carry out, because of the state we are in. Man didn't bring himself into the world. But what do we see today? We see men driving in a way that suggests that they are the ones who brought themselves into the world. A man just came into the world and found himself living. He didn't bring the plants he can see, the mineral resources he can see, the atmosphere, nothing. He didn't bring anything into the world. He didn't create anything. He didn't make anything. But his exhibitions in that world which he didn't bring himself into shows that he brought himself. I don't know if you get it. It shows that he brought himself. So he's living in that independence of himself. He's living in independence in himself. His dependence rather is on himself or in himself, not in the spirit or in the supposed God who brought him, but his dependence is on himself. That is why you can see a man, he gets up today, and the land he came to meet, he can possess it. And for for the next person coming after him to have need or to have use of that land, an exchange needs to be made. This is one of the activities of man. The activity or the introduction of buying and selling. For you to get anything off of me, you need a means of exchange. You need to give me money or whatever thing that will be used as a means of exchange for that transaction to occur. And we claim that we have been made in the image of God and that we are exhibiting the life of God. And you ask yourself, how can that be the life of God? Because if God brought you into the world, as we believe He did, without charge, without your negotiation, without anything, and He drops you in the world and drops you with the know-how on how to use things you find as you find yourself in the world, to use those things to survive freely, how then your subjection of the fellow man or the fellow person coming after you to have to buy or have to look for a means of exchange to get that thing which you have possessed, which I don't know if you get me, to get that thing which you have possessed, which you didn't need to pay anything for, but you subject the person coming after you to look for a means of exchange, to make use of those things which was given to you freely, and you say that that is the life of God.
I mean, that for me, I would say that is the wickedness of man. Because you remember we talked about the wickedness of man, and that the nature of man, being the sinful nature, it can't even live a life. It can't live a life. So, life is where you see everything we are talking about today. We are talking about life here. And life is not a living. That is why the living we exercise, you can see the kind of struggle, the kind of crisis that is going on. It's as a result of the way we live. You see, you just talk about buying and selling. A man has been born into the world or generated into the world, and the spirit that generated everything, provide everything and put for the world before he generated the man into, and give the man sense, which is all of us. But today, the spirit believes that from the structure that you believe that the man that I put into my world is supposed to live freely together and share things in common together. But we can't see that because that is not the nature of man. You see, that even goes to the very human being, I will call it like that, that the spirit generated. But these things are not the things that God has done. That is why we mentioned that the Lord, when we use the word the Lord, is the spirit that generated everything. It's not God yet. So when we say that God has never been in the world, our viewers need to understand why we say that. Because today somebody will say, God has made male and female. But it is not God. It is the spirit that generated everybody, which is the male and female, and put into the world. And even from that Genesis 1 we read the other, Genesis 1 in 27. I said he made man, male and female. And from 28, I think I would like us to read them because the emphasis I want to make now is to make it from there.
Okay, that's from Genesis 1, 27. Right?
27 and 28.
Okay, are we there? So if you are there, I'll read.
Genesis 1, chapter 1,
27.
verse 27.
And 28.
Okay.
So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him, male and female, created he them. And God blessed them. And God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth.
See, I don't want to go into the explanation of this for now because of we have a lot to talk about. But I want to drive the point from the male and the female. We have said that man is male and female. We lay that emphasis that man is male and female. So the female that the world is seeing as woman today is not woman. But you can see now that the Lord created male and female. And you can see today, and the male and female is supposed to be for what? For progression. But today, before the male, or let me say the activities of the male and the female has been thwarted, has been adulterated. You see that before the male can go with the female or maybe lay with the female to bring out the proceeds, which is the offspring, call it, the children, to multiply. You need to pay money, you need to buy. That is the nature. So when you are talking about buying and selling, it doesn't even start from the ground that we are seeing. It begins from the very body of man. So how do you now believe that the Lord provide you male and female, and believe that everybody should all go into the world and multiply? And today, before you can have that, our world has changed that pattern into a way that you need to buy the woman before any procreation can go on. That is a very wrong concept, and I believe that is the reason why we are suffering the things we are suffering.
And you can see from the discussion we are having today, the need for man to change from the state of man to the state of a woman. You see that man has been independent of himself, doing things his way. It is that independent state that made man to went ahead and establish for himself what he calls marriage today, which leads us to that bondage. That when as God appears now, he now tells us that we should do away with that activities, because we were thinking that this is how these things were made to be, not knowing that that is not what the spirit, the God himself, that we're supposed to be answerable to in order for him to guide us on how these things should be. You see that even that activities that lead us to bondage today, that we are going to be struggling with in order to come out. Why? Because we were doing things our way, getting up to know what to do. When it comes to this Genesis chapter 2, verse 23.
Genesis 2:23.
Yes.
And Adam
Sorry,
said,
24. Let's just go straight to 24.
Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh.
You see, because of that idea of man, that's why I say the letter killeth. Only the spirit can bring direction, which is life. From the reading now, you see that man was already made male and female. This place now said that the man should leave father and mother and cleave to his wife. That's where this confusion is coming into this our world, because of this marriage, thinking that this is what it is, because we went ahead to interpret these things on our own, not knowing that this is not how these things were meant to be. This is the thing that man get up to do. And if you even see, we said that it's God, that this marriage of a thing is God that made us to do it. We are obeying God. You can see if it is the way it's supposed to be, it is coming from God. He said a man should leave his father and his mother. But the way we are doing it in this our world, a man is not leaving the father, he's not leaving the mother. Rather, he will even go and bring the female and which he calls the woman, to come and live, to say that we are not even obeying. And when it comes to marriage, if it is God that, as we say, is God that asked us to do, when it comes to marriage, it's supposed to be one standard coming from that same God. But you see that the standard we have in the world, we have the traditional home, we have the church wedding, which is, you can't tell that this is how God asked us to do. So where do we get it from? To see that by our explanation, by our that independent state that we think that we know what to do, this is where the thing leads us to, which is the bondage. Now, which has to be the state that God demands from us now, is how to come out from this mess that we have gotten ourselves into.
That is the reason why sometimes when we have, as a man, when you go and pick the female as a wife, after buying the woman, and you take the woman back to the house, and you started maltreating the female, because she's now become your own property. Before you know, quarrel or fight will start. And you see this kind of, I call it the kind of debate in our world, that women are equal with men. That's what we used to say, that we are all equal.
They fight for gender equality.
Both the male and the female. But you see, that is because the Lord that created man from the beginning, made them male and female. But you see, the equality cannot be achieved from that source, because with that male and female, we still function with the spirit of man. You see, that spirit of independence. So equality cannot be there, cannot achieve from there. It is only that God, when that God appears, just like we explain what a woman is, that you can now have equality.
That's because there's been a huge misconception, which is the foundation of this discussion. The misconception that we have about these issues. We have described the human to be the state of dependence in God, and we have also described how that state of dependence in God cannot be attained without the person of God, who has the capacity or the ability to make that transition work. You see? So, but because of the state of man, and the misconception of man, man has taken the female, which is because what we are now diving into now is the need for the change of state, and is the activities that we carry out. That is what the activities we carry out are what needs to change. The activities we carry out are what needs to be stopped for the change of state to occur. So now it seems like we are looking into the marriage institution of man. You see, and the misconception of what marriage actually is, or what marriage was supposed to achieve. With men, because of the misconception that we have taken the female to be the woman and the male to be the man. And because of that, and because of the availability of this book, which we call the Bible, we now read the book and apply our own knowledge to the book and derive our own interpretation and assume that is how it's supposed to be.
Yes.
And what is the assumption? The assumption is a man now is the male and the female is the woman. So, and because of that assumption, we have now seen, or we have now taken it to be that the woman is who has to depend on man, because the state of woman is the state of dependence. So we have now taken that the woman is meant to submit or depend on the man. You see, but in our world now, is the female needs to depend on the male. You see, that is it. Now, because we can now read the book, we now see where it's referred to that a man has to leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. Because of that, we have taken the woman as well to be the wife. You see, this is just the foundation of our misconception. We have taken the female to be the woman, and we have taken the female as well to be the wife. So we are now seeing it like the man now being the male has to go and look for a female in the name of looking for a woman and a wife, which is out of the equation. Because we have described that man was introduced into the world as a pair, being male and female, but they were introduced in a state of independence. They were alone. You see, and because they were alone, still that Lord who brought them saw the need to introduce a third party, which he described as the helpmates, and to meet up with their limitation.
And that's significant is right now. This is our world right now.
It's now, because it seems like we are telling a story, but what we are describing isn't something that had happened. If not, we would have been reaping the benefits of that. But it's because it hasn't happened, and it's something that needs to happen. That's why I think this information is coming out now, because the time is now near, or the time has come for this change to occur. You see, so the man was alone, even as a pair, being male and female, and the Lord who brought them saw that state, that they were alone, they were independent, helpless. They were alone, they were helpless. So he had to introduce a third party, and the third party was described to be the help, and the help was to meet the pair. But what is that help?
Do you know? It's like, let me just, like what you said, that the need for us to be transformed into the state of a woman. You see, the state of a man has put us in a way that we are living a life that is totally opposite the life of God. If you look at it very, very well, the life of a man is directly opposite the life of God.
The living of man
The
cannot
living,
think
yeah,
man,
the living
man
of
has
man
life.
is directly
Yes.
opposite the way. The way of man is directly opposite the way of God.
Yes.
And for us to have that help, we now need to be transformed from a state of a man to a state of a woman by living the way of man, to now have to submit into that help, which is God.
Yes, because the help now, just from what we are saying, the help now was introduced to the pair, the male and the female. And that pair now, having been described to be the help, was now later on described as the woman. Now what was introduced to the pair was the help, and the help was now described to be the woman. But man needs help, you see, and he can't get help without that third party which has been introduced. And in our world, we have already come to collectively agree that help can't come from any other person outside of God. So it now shows what was introduced to the pair, that God was now introduced to the pair. That's why we have been trying to emphasize that the Lord is the overall spirit who brought man. And it's that Lord who brought man that will still bring God as well to be in charge of the men he has brought. You see, so that's why even as he had brought men, he described them as being alone and independent because they didn't have that help. And that help is only with God. So God was now introduced, or God is introduced in their midst as that woman. And the woman now we have described to be the state of submission and
I would like
dependence.
us to stop using words.
Is
You understand?
No, because
right now,
it's like
why
a story that
I said before that it is time we put the thing in the way that it is now. We have made a kind of, I think yes, the last episode we tried to make a kind of emphasis that when we bring this illustration, we are trying to point this thing based on where our world is driving their knowledge from.
yes.
But now we are bringing the knowledge from the source that we know that this is the only way things can work. So that's why I said we should remove that word
Words.
because right now our world needs help.
Yes.
There is a big limitation in our world that every man is seeing, every man is carrying. Those who go to the moon, they see. Those who go to the sea, they see. Those who go to what will I call it, climate change, every of those parties, they see that we have limitation as man. That is because the state of man is a state of limitation. So the help is God that need to come and do a work, to work every man, to form every man. No man has a form. So it is that work now that will bring a woman in each person in this world.
And
Which is what we are, I think, which is what we are trying to describe.
if you look at that illustration you just made, that the Lord has to bring God to work on this man in order for man to transform from the state of being independence to a state of dependence on God. You see that it was the Lord that created this man to see that it is only God that can bring this up. Lord in himself could not help this man until he has to make this help meet for man. So if it was the Lord that has to help man, he will have be the one to do whatever he wanted to do for them now. But you see that he was the one even talking that man is without help. So I have to make him a help meet to show that the help cannot come from the Lord. It is only God that the Lord has designed this help to come from. So that's what I wanted to.
Well, so not necessarily the help is not coming from the Lord. I get what you're saying. The help, just as you have described, said the Lord made the man. And the Lord that made the man identifies that the man is without help.
Yes.
He identifies he is without help.
But he could not help him that time.
But he couldn't help the man. But it's still the Lord who knows or who has identified that the man is without help.
That's when
and knows that he needs to render help to the man. But he knows he can't render help to the man
without
in the state the man is. So he introduces who should be help to the man.
Yes.
I don't know if you get me.
Yes.
So the help is coming from the Lord through God. Not necessarily because the Lord is not helping, or the Lord can't help the man, but the Lord has already programmed that his help will come from man, from God. So that's why
The help of man is God.
the help of man is God. You see, because he was the one that made man with the limitation. So he's the one who is going to eliminate that limitation. And the only way he can eliminate, or the way he has planned to eliminate that limitation, just as she has said, is by introducing God in their midst. You see, but we are still trying to, get the picture of the transformation or the change of faith.
Like what my brother said about man being limited. You see, the major purpose of God is to transform man being the state of limitation to a state that he will not have limitation again.
Yes.
You see, and is that process, is that what can make you from being limited to something that you know that you're not going to be limited again,
Which is even the desire of every man.
which is the desire of every man. Now look at, because we are discussing about who a woman is that process that will make you to transform from that limited state to the state of unlimited. It is what will make you a woman, which is the submission unto that God that the Lord has already provided for you. He will be the one to show you the things to do. He will be the one to guide you. He will be the one that you're not going to now depend on all the activities of everything that you now have to do. All the things that you now have to come from him. You now work according to his command, according to his principles. Now he will be the one now to make you to have that state of a woman by doing according to his command.
Because he's the first woman that has been introduced. And we are supposed to be made in that image of that woman, that image and likeness of that woman, which is now God. Because God now is the first woman. And because his submission and dependence is on that Lord who has brought him to be the head over the rest of the people he's coming to meet.
So
because it doesn't happen.
Say that God is not a man.
Yes.
Because he is a woman.
Because he's
the first woman.
He's the first woman.
You know,
but that's not what we are driving.
One of the challenges our world has today is that we don't know the difference between the Lord and God, which is what the major emphasis that we try to lay here many a time. That when you say the Lord, we are talking about the spirit that is overall, is in charge of everything. He's the one that is driving every man on the face of the earth. But he knows that spirit of man that he introduced in men has a big limitation in everybody. But he gives his approval to one person in a generation. That one person is the body that he will provide without sin, because that is the one that is going to bring us God to mankind.
And that's that one that is going to effect the change. But we are still trying to describe that change, because because you read from Genesis 2:24, understand? Because which was where the whole issue of marriage we were talking about emanated from. But all this while now I've been trying to draw a picture of how that change needs to occur.
Let me put it that way. How can you now become a woman from being a man?
Yes,
I think we should understand that what can make you a woman. What I mean by a woman is the state of a woman is by total submission to the God that the Lord has already provided for us. We should follow.
And we should not forget, when you read Genesis chapter 2, and then you move to chapter 3, after the woman was made, there was another picture. And that picture was the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and the tree of life. Because God is forming this woman for a purpose. And the formation of that woman is to give the woman
Life.
life, which is the male and the female in the state of a woman. So give the woman life. Now, this picture was drawn that there was this tree in the middle of the garden, which is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And in the same garden, there was the tree of life. So, but the picture that was shown there is the picture that was shown there is about the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. But nothing was said about the tree of life. And to show that this thing is not story, is not something that happened, how many thousand years ago. The tree of life, if it is a tree we know as man, should be there. The tree of knowledge of good and evil, it should be there. People should be eating of it as an offspring of Adam, to show that these are spiritual significance that must come to pass when God himself is on ground to interpret these things, to make these things happen in human lives. God is life. The reason we have been dying is because of our activities. And for you to be a woman is not an assurance. It's not a guarantee that you will not die anymore, that you will have his life. In fact, it is very dicey to even be in the state of a woman, because he is the one to bring you to that state. He knows that that is the only state that can make it possible for you to be submissive to his instructions, because the instructions that will bring life to you are very hard. It's hard for a man to do. If he does not help you, he will not. So it's a dicey state. The state of a woman is a very dicey state, because that is the path that will lead to you shall surely die. So it's a scary state, but also it is very important to be in that state. So God is life. We have to look at why we have been dying. Why we have been dying, why the world is crumbling today is because we took this Bible and interpret these things. Do not forget that everything that was happening to Adam, everything that was happening to the male and the female, was the Lord God doing it to them, interpreting it to them. So he did not tell them to take it and interpret and go and form what they call marriage today. That is why we die. That is why there is divorce. That is why the one called a husband will kill the wife for material possession. That is why the wife will kill the husband. A lot of people are marrying today just for material possession, to take the property of the man. So that is why we die. That is the problem. So these activities, wherever you are, if you are listening to this, it has to be stopped, but you cannot stop it on your own. The one that can stop it for you is on ground. The one who has that Spirit of God. He's the one that can stop it for you. He's the one that you must listen to. You must listen to his guide, to his instruction, because he is the only husbandman. Do not forget that the woman listened to the voice of the serpent, and it was referred to, the serpent was referred to her listening to the voice of her husband. If you read that illustration. So her husband now is the serpentine situation that you cannot know how to wangle your way out when you deviate from the instruction of the one that will give you life. That is the serpent. So when you break the edge, the serpent will bite. So the one who knows that for you to be in the state of a woman does not mean, because do not forget, the man, which is the male and the female, has the first husband, which is the spirit of man inside them. So all the disobedient life they have been disobeying is that man in them living that disobedience. So for them to be free from that spirit, they must listen to this one now, who has the capacity to free them from the spirit that has been putting them that kept them in bondage. Now, when you listen to the one who has life in himself, that one now becomes a new husband to the woman, which is the male and the female. Be you a male, be you a female. When you listen to the voice of God in our midst, that voice will become your new husband. That is who we should listen to. When you keep living the life you are living, you are listening to the voice of your husband, which is the spirit of man. So the only way it is possible for you to please God, is for you to be in the state of a woman, and you cannot bring yourself to that state. The Spirit of God is the only one that will put you in that state. And the way he puts you is when you listen to his guide, you listen to instructions, you just begin to see yourself that, me that was stubborn before. That is why he said, that when the woman was brought to the man, he said he and his wife, because those instructions that the Spirit of God will give to you, they are the wife you should marry to, because that is what will introduce you to his family. The significance of a wife is a family, because when you have a wife, you have hope that a child will come out from it. So those instructions you have been listening to is what will now make you a wife, in order for you to be in that state of continuing to following his guide, so that the life of God will be introduced into you. That is the only way for man. That is the only way out for man.
You know, you have just described something. Okay. We're sorry about that. We had to attend to some technical difficulties. So, but as you were saying, you are just described, you know, the outcome of the change, or the outcome of the encounter a man has with God.
It's not really the outcome of encounter a man has with God. From what I'm listening, it's like it's a process that one need to undergo. But that process cannot go on when God is not involved with men.
Well, because what I'm driving at is the emphasis he was making. The emphasis he made are the outcome of that your encounter with the person who would change that your state. That is the emphasis he's making. The outcome of that your encounter with that person. That is the emphasis that he's making. Because man that has been described as being independent needs to submit to God. And you can't submit to God as a vacuum. God needs to be present for you to submit to. And it's the submission to God, and that's, instigates the change of state. And your emphasis is the outcome of that change in state that will occur when a man encounters the person of God. But I still feel that at this point, that we haven't really, brought to light, you understand, the real issues that has derailed man. Because what we are describing now is
Final product.
is man. Because man is living. The whole picture has been painted in this book is that men have been living in the world and expecting a Messiah to come, which is how it is today. That men has been living in this world expecting a Messiah to come. See, so the appearance of that Messiah, the appearance of that person of God, is what marks the beginning of all these things we have been reading. Which is why we have been trying to, let those watching us to understand that the book is not, history, the book of past religious events. No, that the appearance of God in the midst of the people is what marks the beginning of this work.
Yes.
It's what marks the beginning of this work. You see, so now I think this is the perfect opportunity to let those watching and listening to us see the practicality of all these things without even having to refer too much to it again, because we have just drawn that picture. You see, now it's clear that men are living and God needs to be introduced in their midst.
Yes.
So now we are those men living
Yes.
and God needs to be introduced in our midst, because our activities are out of course. He said that all the foundation of the earth are out of course. You see, out of course.
No.
You see, and in Proverbs, it says in Proverbs 16:25, it says, there is a way that seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. That is how men have been living. That's why, as I said earlier, the outcome of that our exhibition is what we see at the end, to be that death that a man needs to be buried underneath the ground. You see, so it's that way of man that is in independence, both the male and the female, that the Lord now identifies as, these people are helpless, so I need to introduce help to them, which is where that helpmeet, which is now the woman, which is now God, has to be presented to the man. So God now comes to meet men, which is each and every one of us as we are now in our exhibitions, and he's letting us know that, listen, the way that you are living is the reason the outcome of these things are the way they are.
And what are those ways?
You see, and what are those ways?
Activities? What are
You see, what are those activities? Because
the buying and selling?
because we
I
started.
pointed something from the
No, we started off with the institution of marriage. You see, but we haven't really dissected or gone into it. You see, let's say that is what we are picking up now. You understand? Let's start with that as one of the activities that God now comes to meet us in. You understand? And that activity was derived from what we could read here. You understand? And it was interpreted based on our own knowledge. You see, because
Misinterpreted.
it was misinterpreted, not even interpreted, because interpreted is a wrong way stuff. Yeah, it should be the right way. So we misinterpreted it, because if we interpreted it, we would have been according to the way the Spirit of God intended it to go. So we misinterpreted it.
We were not the one.
Because we are not the ones who were intended to make the things work. So we are now taking the female to be the woman, and we have now established that the male is the man. You see, and based on that knowledge, we establish what we call marriage, which is what we are going to be talking about. We have established what we call marriage based on that, and the marriage that we have established is the union between the male and the female, which they are both men, the male man and the female man. That is what we have established as marriage, and we have tagged that to be the establishment of God, which is not. And it's because it's not the establishment of God, that is why we see the issues we have in them. First and foremost, we introduce buying and selling. In our part of the world, I don't know how it is for other places. In our part of the world where we are reaching out to you from, we have our own cultures. You talked about the traditional culture and the culture of the church of man. In our traditional culture, the male needs to meet the family of the female, and a transaction is made.
Yes.
You see, and that transaction is an exchange. Whatever thing is exchanged, mostly is money
Material
and
things.
there's a form of exchange. You see, so in simple terms, what has just occurred there is the activity of buying and selling. But don't forget that the Christ who supposedly came to render help to the people went to the the temple of God, which we have collectively come to agree, because that's how it is, that it's the heart and body of man.
Which is the temple of
That,
God.
that is the temple of God. Supposedly, that is supposed to be the temple of God. You see, so we could read what happened.
He drove away
And
those.
that's based on what we could read, that he drove away those who sold and bought in the temple of God. And that temple of God is not a building,
And he made,
but the heart of man.
he made a statement there that the house should be the
House of prayer. But we have turned it into a den of thieves. You see, that's
Now, who is a thief?
you see, someone who takes based on our definition of what a thief is. And buy from someone else who has claimed another person to be his own.
Yes.
You see, but this is an activity that is in complete disregard and disobedience to the spirit or the ways of God. So he now comes to now let you see that this way is not in my program. That the marriage which is supposed to happen is supposed to be between God and his people. And the only way that marriage can happen, or the only way that marriage can be attained, is when God is present amongst the people and effects his change on the people, turning them from that state of man to that state of woman, which now signifies dependence and submission, that marriage can occur, which you now talked about bringing about the wife. You see, because we said that God is the only husbandman, and we are meant to be that wife who should submit to that husbandman, which signifies that marriage.
And if you watch, when the person goes to marry, I mean the man goes to marry, he takes the position of a husband. Which is the position of God. So he's now competing with God. in that office. And how do you expect God to react to that kind of situation? It's chaos.
That's why we are suffering.
That's why we are seeing the whole chaos we are seeing today, because he's not happy. If this seat is meant for you to sit, and you come and see someone sitting on that seat, how would you react? Will you be happy? You will not be happy. You do everything possible to make sure that that person doesn't enjoy that seat.
We even make it look like when you don't marry, so you won't even get children. Because I've said before that the male and female was made for procreation.
Yes.
But now, before you go on with that procreation,
For this cause, he said, therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. We have, read that, and we have misinterpreted it, or we have applied it based on our own knowledge to now be that the male now has to go get a female as the woman to be a wife to him.
so if those things that we are reading is just carnal, I will even say the man